since we last did a kind of an informal take two stream, but I wanted to make sure that you all were up to date on some of the things that are happening, that have been happening, because I forget when you have like 100 and nearly 130,000 subscribers, sometimes it means that there are things that you are unaware of, that you thought everybody knew and don't or didn't. And so revisiting them on take two seems like a smart choice. As you can tell, I'm sitting in my car. It's because my dog has gone for his weekly massage appointment. And so it's a great time for me to sit down and chat with you guys and just kind of fill you in on some things. Thank you to everybody who has been so kind over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and have been concerned about my health. I don't want to talk about it in great depth, but suffice to say that the medication that I'm on is still kicking my butt. One of the side effects of that medication is that it makes me feel very tired and lethargic, and it slows my heart rate down quite considerably, lowers my blood pressure, and it means that I've got a lot less energy. And you will have noticed so far this week I've only produced one video on TE, and that is because the output of the videos are going to go down, because I have a lot less energy, and I'm trying really hard not to overwork, because right now overworking would make things substantially worse. As a side, someone just asked, here's what, I think in reference to my dog. One of my dogs, Pepper, he's quite old. He's going to be 13 this year. He has, in fact, he's going to be 13 next month. He has severe arthritis and has had since he was about 3 or 4 years old. And so he has hydrotherapy once a week, and now he has a massage the day after his hydrotherapy, just to kind of help release any of the stresses and strains that are still in his muscles. He goes to the same veterinary place for that. So my wife takes him to hydrotherapy, and I take him to massage. And I'm better at driving in the morning than in the evening. Those who know me personally will know that I don't like driving at night. That's partly because of the medication I'm on. I get kind of tired, and when I get tired, I generally fall asleep pretty quickly. Okay, so back to my health really briefly, and I want to make this really brief. If you've got questions, just throw them up, and I'll try my best to answer them as we go through. So for those who missed the last video that I made, it's on this channel. I have long QT syndrome, which is an electrical problem with the heart, and it means the heart doesn't beat. The timing of the way that the heart beats is not always good. And when you've been exercising, or if your heart starts beating too quickly, or if you over-exercise, or if you are extremely emotional or extremely shocked, like someone surprises you, your heart rate can soar to dangerous levels, and the repolarization of your heart can't keep up, and so that can lead to a cardiac arrest, which of course can lead to you dying. One of the solutions to that is to have an implanted defibrillator put in your chest. It's a bit like a pacemaker. At the moment, they don't think they need to put one in me. I'm just on medication, but that medication slows my heart rate down. So a good example is when I'm working out. These days, when I'm working out, my heart rate doesn't go above about 130 or maybe 140 beats per minute. But previously, when I'm off the medication, my heart rate can go to 180, 190 beats per minute, which is actually above what would be considered the maximum heart rate for someone of my age. So, and in fact, it was the last stress test that I did where I had to run on a treadmill for about 20 minutes, where they went, yeah, while you were exercising, your heart rate was fine, but then when you stopped exercising, your heart rate was doing dangerous things. And that's why I'm now on this medication. But it does mean that I'm a lot slower and a lot more kind of lethargic. As my body gets used to the medication, hopefully my energy levels will come back up. I've continued to work out. I mean, I'm continuing to lose a bit of weight here and there, so I'm continuing to work out, and that's great. But I just have to be really careful now about how I work out. There's certain types of workout I cannot do anymore because it would just be too risky, too dangerous. So I have to be really careful about that. And obviously, this is why I am being really careful about how much content I'm producing. I have a biopsy for next Tuesday. For those who don't know, again, shortly after I was diagnosed with long QT, in fact, the very next day, I got a call from my breast care clinic. I am at a high risk of developing breast cancer because everybody in my family has had cancer. All of the women in my family have had breast cancer. My dad died of a brain tumor. So, and obviously I lost my eldest sister to breast cancer. So they've been putting me on regular screening, which includes a mammogram every year and also an MRI every year. And I had an MRI about 3 weeks ago. It's a routine MRI, but it showed up some unknown masses, or non-mass enhancements, I think is what they call them. And so I went to a clinic on Monday and I had an ultrasound to see if they could see that same issue that they saw in the MRI. And at that point, had they seen it, they would have given me a biopsy there and then, I think. But they couldn't find it. So next Tuesday, I have to go in for a slightly more invasive biopsy, which basically means I have to have an MRI. And then they will put me on a like a bed, put me into the MRI, check that they can still see the mass, or the non-mass enhancement is what they call it, and then they'll mark me in a particular way. They'll go in, they'll take a biopsy, and then I will be back home. So next Tuesday there will be no content unless I have made it in advance, and obviously with the caveat of me trying not to overwork, it means that it's unlikely that there'll be content next Tuesday and possibly next Wednesday because I'm going to be sore for a couple of days afterwards. From then on, it'll be about 5 to 10 days, and hopefully I'll know 5 to 10 days later whether I have nothing to worry about, which is hopefully what will happen, or whether it's something that they're concerned about. And at that point, I don't know what will happen. My goal is to try and keep Transport Evolve running throughout all of this. You guys probably don't know this, but I have, for the past 10 years, I have been an adoptive parent. I have had to deal with some pretty nasty stuff as an adoptive parent. My adoptive children were pretty old when they came to live with us. They had a lot of trauma. It caused me a lot of secondary trauma. There were lots of hospital trips for my kids, lots of dealings with the authorities over the years to help our kids out. And so my hope is that I can carry on doing what I did for those last 10 years and just kind of push on through it. But obviously I'm 10 years older, and I don't have the resilience that I had 10 years ago because trauma wears you down. So that's everything that's going on there with the health stuff. We're 8 minutes in. I talked way too much about that. Next, let's talk about all of the other stuff that I want to talk about. And Anthony, thank you. Health and family do come first. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the location of the Aptera video. Those of you who know, we recorded a video with Aptera, with Chris and Steve from Aptera. It was an interview we recorded, would have been literally just before Christmas. And it was in the same kind of vein as the videos that we already did over the Christmas period. And one of them, that video was slightly different in so much as, instead of the guests being remotely called in and me recording both audio and video on my side, Aptera said, hey, we've got somebody on here who can record the audio and video and send it to you. And so I said, sure. And they recorded their side of the conversation, their audio and their video, and sent it over, which means we're going to get 3 camera angles, which is kind of nice. for Steve and Chris, but unfortunately the audio, there was a failure on Chris's microphone, and so Chris's audio sounds a bit pants. So I've been working hard behind the scenes. I did some work on it yesterday, cleaning up the audio and to try and make Chris sound a little bit more like Steve, so that you guys get the highest quality video that you can get. So I'm going to work on fixing that in the next day or so, and hopefully, if that doesn't go out this week, it will go out probably next Tuesday when I'm having that procedure. So that's the Aptera video, and when we can expect to see that. We're also working on some other videos that we haven't had a chance to work on yet. That's partly because Erin is still on vacation. She's still taking her Christmas break. We were working with a client coming up to Christmas, a private client, and if you watch the video about where we get our money from, you'll know that we do sometimes take on private clients, and we had a private client that we were working with who had a New Year deadline. And so Erin has been working pretty constantly since the end of October, beginning of November, on this 10 video project for this client. It's been involved a lot of animation. It's been kind of hands off for me. I was responsible for the initial videography and the sound. And once I'd done the live video and that, I just handed it over to Erin. But we had 2 weeks just before Christmas as a buffer zone. We had to use those up, and that meant that Erin didn't get a Christmas break. She got some time at Christmas, but she didn't get as long as we'd wanted her to have. So she's taking an extra week now, and then she'll be back with us next week sometime, at which point we'll start to be able to do all of the other things that we're going to do. So the channel is going to be a little bit nebulous for the next couple of weeks. We had our best December ever, and I'm really excited and proud of the team for that. But we are kind of tweaking a few things. Morgan is working on some new scripts. Morgan, if you don't know, he's our freelancer who comes and helps out with script writing. We tend to throw him kind of the more in-depth videos that take a little bit longer to write. And then we work together on producing something. He's working on some stuff too, and he's recently just moved university, so that's cool as well. Keep the momentum going. I hope that we keep the momentum going, but like I say, if my health gets to a point where I need to take time off, then I'll have no choice, but ultimately I'm hoping that we can do some more things there. Let's talk about the Bolt. So the Bolt, I'm sitting in the Bolt right now. The Chevrolet Bolt EV, obviously we had the temporary battery fix software update applied. The car has been perfectly fine since it threw those errors earlier on, and hopefully that means that everything is now pretty stable. We're going to wait for the battery update to happen, which is really good. Another update on the Chevrolet Bolt. Maybe I'll do a video on the main channel. If you want me to do a video on the main channel, maybe I'll do that today or later this week. It'd be a nice quick one to do. We had a letter from the insurance broker, Progressive, our insurance company, saying, "Oh yeah, sorry, we screwed up." For those who don't know, back in April 2019, one of my family members who did not have a driving license, who was learning to drive and was pretty close to passing the test, decided to borrow my car after they'd got cross with me about something. They decided to borrow my car. They took it for a spin around the local area, and they got up to 90 miles an hour, I think, in a 30. I only found out that they had taken the car because I was at work. I'd got a press car at the time. Had the Kia e-Niro. It was when we filmed the Kia e-Niro. It's one of the reasons why that review took a long time to do, because every time I started it, it just kind of brought back a lot of stuff. The Kia e-Niro was the car that I was driving, so I didn't have my car with me. My car was at home, and they'd just seen the keys and decided to take it and skip to school. My friend, who is a paramedic, noticed my car was driving around town quite quickly and said, "Oh, you okay? You just went past me in a hurry." And I said, "No, it wasn't me." Thanks to OnStar, we were able to locate the car. We basically worked with the police to apprehend said member of the family, who got themselves in a lot of trouble for it, and can still not drive. Is still not allowed to drive because while they got a 1-year ban, but while they are no longer allowed to, while they are now technically allowed to get a license, they have to have really expensive insurance, and we're not willing to pay for that, and they can't afford it, so they are stuck with something else instead. Anyway, as part of that, and as part of that car incident, when we recovered the car, there was a slight ding on the back. So we put that through the insurance, and while they were dealing with that, the insurance company marked that as a write-off. They said the car was totaled when it wasn't. They'd authorized the repairs. The repairs had gone through, and somebody else in a different department had got our car on screen and clicked that our car had been made a total loss. It was a completely erroneous thing to do. It wasn't anything to do with the car dealership. It wasn't anything to do with anything else. But they clicked on make this car a total, and they did, which meant that when it came to renewing the title for the car, the DMV went, "Hey, this is a totaled car. You need to have an extra inspection." Turns out that it was an error. They sent me an apology letter. They're still sorting it out, but obviously, as you can see, I'm still driving the car. So they've told me, the insurance company have told me that if anything happens, they're going to back me up. So I'm going to hold them to that. But I've also told them that if they can't remove the branding on my car, then I want them to buy this car outright. And I'm very serious about that, because obviously this is an investment. Any car is an investment, and you need to make sure that that's not screwed up by people being idiots. So that's everything that's going on with the Bolt. Now let's talk about the Honda. So Damien Maguire has, I've been talking to him over in Ireland, and he has sent me a control board, or is sending me a control board for a Chevrolet Volt. Now, so obviously every major manufacturer has a motor controller and an inverter for their EVs. In the case of the Honda Insight project, we have an EV1 motor inside it that was obtained and put in before I had the car. That EV1 motor is obviously a GM product, and so we're going to go with kind of the GM idea and run with it. Partly because the Chevrolet Volt battery pack is a modular battery pack, and it also has integrated cooling inside the pack. So I'm going to keep my eyes open for Chevrolet Volt battery packs, which I think will then mount in the rear of the vehicle. We're going to use a Chevrolet Volt inverter to power the motor. And in order for us to successfully control the inverter and send it the right signals, you need a control board, which is what Damien and the rest of the team at the Open Inverter Project are doing. And so it's an open source inverter control module that kind of sits as a bridge between the car and the repurposed OEM inverter. So in terms of the Volt, we're going to use a Volt inverter for two reasons. One, obviously it's a GM motor, but we are going to put one of the inverter circuits, because the Volt has 2 motors. You may not know this, but the Chevrolet Volt has not 1 but 2 electric motors in it. And so it's got 2 inverter circuits. And what we're going to use is one of those inverter circuits to drive the motor, and the second inverter circuit to either control the air conditioning or to maybe see if we can do a vehicle to grid. A very rudimentary vehicle to grid, but to see if we can do a vehicle to grid. Because of everything else that's going on in my life, I don't expect the Honda to be finished this year, and I want to be really open and honest with you about it and say this project is likely to take a while, especially if it's bad news next week. But I still want to do it. I still want to make it happen. Some of you have reached out and offered some help. I am terrible at responding, and I'm sorry. I would love to get some help on this, and so let's talk at some point about seeing if we can get some welding done and some other things. I can weld, but I'm pretty rubbish at welding, so I might need some help there, especially with aluminium, making sure that the frame is all set up properly. So that's where the Honda Insight is. There will be another video coming on that in the future, but as you can tell, it's a lot. I mean, just sitting here talking to you about it is actually tiring me out. Do I think it will beat Rich Rebuild's Mini in a race? Rich said his has got up to 105 miles per hour. I'm not sure. I am not sure. Just as a side note here, I had a couple of people reach out on Patreon and say, hey, your name was not on the list of Patreon supporters, and I'm really sorry. Erin normally does that, normally does the list, and obviously with Erin not around, I'm doing it, and I missed a couple of names, and I'm sorry about that. Patreon has recently changed some of its controls for Patreon creators, and so I obviously didn't apply the filter right. I'll take that on the nose, and I'll look at that when I get back in the studio, or back at home later today. Final thing I want to talk to you about is solar and where we're going with the house. So we are about to hook up with a company to talk about to basically doing an affiliate program with a company that's not an automaker but works in the energy sector. It's around solar energy, and as part of that process, we were already looking into solar panels, but we ended up buying solar panels and working with these guys, and not from this company, but from an associated kind of company that they work with. So we're in the process of going through a remortgage for our house right now. When we bought our house, we were paying a fairly high mortgage rate because the interest rates were pretty high. Now they've dropped, and the long story cut very short is if we are successful in our remortgage, we'll actually we'll be paying less per month than we're currently paying for just the house to have the house and the solar panels, which is kind of crazy. We're looking at just over 16 kilowatt peak solar output. We are not going with Tesla units. We're going with it would be I can't remember what the solar panels are, but the energy kind of the inverter system will be an N-phase system. It will be a grid tied system, so we'll be able to export power to the grid, and because I live in a state that has net metering, we'll earn credits for every kilowatt hour of electricity that we send to the grid, and we can use that to offset any consumption that we make when the grid is not doing that. I know, Stefan, time bummer. I'm going to be finishing in a few minutes anyway, so you're not going to miss much. But that is where we are at right now with that. In that regard, we're doing really well in terms of the progress on that, and there'll be some videos on the solar installation process. Ultimately, we'd like to get a heat pump system in the house as well. And we'll go from there. No battery power backup because the economics of batteries make no sense, and we're not flush with cash. We're only able to do this because we're basically taking advantage of the drop in solar costs and also the drop in interest rates. But we're not going to be putting batteries on because that is going to that would literally add tens of thousands of dollars to it, and we may end up with a DIY battery solution, but that's further down the line. We do eventually need to be completely off grid. We've got a water pump on the property. We've also got a septic system, so we don't have a water company for our water, and it would be good to be able to pump that in an emergency, which we can't do right now. And of course, we live in earthquake zone, so having battery backup power is kind of important, but it's a long time important rather than a short term important of having solar, which we can take advantage of tax credits. We can also take advantage of the fact that we stand to save about $700 a month as a consequence. So it's pretty good. Anyway, that is everything that's going on right now. Please be patient with us. It's going to take a while for me to get back in the saddle. Just doing this video, it's not nothing personal, but I'm currently feeling nauseous and have done for most of this video, which is a side effect of my medication. But at the end of the day, feeling nauseous and having less energy is certainly better than risking getting an arrhythmia or an irregular heartbeat and having a cardiac arrest and dying. So I'm willing to take that for now. Once I know more with my genetics, I've got genetic testing in about 2 weeks. Once I know from a genetic standpoint what is causing my long QT, then they'll decide whether they need to give me an ICD or something else. Or whether I can just stay on the medication. And at that point, I will talk to my cardiologist about changing my medication. As I talked to my mum this morning, and she has the same medication, or she was on the same medication as me. She doesn't like it either. So, might just be a weird thing in our family with this particular medication. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me. I'm sorry about the reduced output. Keep smiling. Be nice to someone else. Keep evolving.